Happy Sweet 16 to Pretty Little Liars. Yes, today is the 16th anniversary of the show's first episode, if you can believe it or not. And I thought, what better way is there to commemorate the show than to put on our detective hats and try to pinpoint the exact moment that Pretty Little Liars as a show died. Let me start off by saying that Pretty Little Liars is a comfort show for me. I hold it very near and dear to my heart, and I've kind of stayed away from talking about it on the channel for a couple of reasons, mainly the fact that I haven't seen it in years. Also, there are just a lot of Pretty Little Liars videos on the internet, and I didn't want to add to the ever-growing list of videos for fans to watch, if that makes any sense. But today is the day that I am finally stepping in and giving my 2 cents on the matter, because I am currently halfway through season 5 with my boyfriend. I haven't watched this show since I was like 13 or 14, and this time around, it definitely aged quite a bit. I'm 22 now, so it's been almost 10 years since I watched this show. Just a few disclaimers, this is not a recap or an analysis video, so much as it is just me kind of going through my grievances with the show on camera, kind of like a review, but obviously, like I said, I'm only halfway through season 5, and the other disclaimer is that this video is going to be full of spoilers. If you would like to avoid those, go ahead and click off now. I might eventually make a full recap or a full analysis on the show if you guys would like me to. Okay, let me start off by saying PLL is not and has never been that good of a show, and I think we can all agree to some extent that Marlene King, the showrunner of this little gem, genuinely sucks as a writer. Not because her writing and direction is particularly all that bad, but because it's very misleading and not in a good way. With that being said, Pretty Little Liars is responsible for so many iconic characters and moments and storylines, and it kind of became the quintessential teen soap opera of the 2010s. In spite of the tone of this video, I promise you, I feel immense love for this show, and everything that I'm saying in this video, while there are genuine critiques in it, obviously, doesn't really hinder my love for this show. And I don't want to try and come off as someone who's just trying to trash like some 2010s teen drama, but like, I'm trashing it or I'm critiquing it because I care so much about it, if that makes any sense. Like I said, this was one of the first shows that I ever watched that wasn't like for children, basically. So everything that I'm saying in this video comes from a place of love. Before we can get into the show and its crash and burn, we have to go back to the very beginning.
Allison? Yes, Catherine? I have something I want to tell you, but you have to promise never to tell anyone. I promise.
The Pretty Little Liars book series follows a group of 4 high school girls. There's Aria Montgomery, the artsy one, Emily Fields, the queer sportsy one, Hannah Marin, the fashionista, and Spencer Hastings, the smart girl. The beginning of the book series follows the girls as they are trying to cope with the disappearance of the high school mean girl, Allison De Laurentiis, whom all 4 girls were best friends with. While dealing with their own dramas, the girls must regroup with each other after spending a whole year apart due to Allison's disappearance, as they all start to get threatening anonymous messages. That is the very simple premise that the 2010 television series adapts. The books weren't exactly a huge hit, and they weren't thought of as critical darlings either, but the series spawned 16 books, 8 of which were already released by the time of the ABC Family television show. Apart from the early episodes of PLL, the books follow a completely different trajectory from the television show, and Sarah Shepard, who was the author of said book series, has gone on record as saying that she thinks that ultimately was a good thing for each individual version of the story, because it allowed them to be different but also follow the same main storyline. The books and the show ended up having a bit of a symbiotic relationship from the years 2010 to 2014 when the book series ended. Wicked, the 8th book in the series and end of the 2nd arc in the book series, was even released on the same date as the TV show's premiere episode. And from that point onward, the next 8 books were released either on or around the premiere of the show. Sarah was incredibly smart when picking these release dates to line up perfectly with either premiere days of the show or mid-season finales of the show, because Like I said, it generated buzz for not only the books, but also the show itself. While the book series might not have been such a huge smash hit, the television show, on the other hand, was quite the hit with audiences, like to the point where PLL is still talked about online today. Like, it is kind of a phenomenon. The fifth season is definitely where a lot of people kind of take issue with the show. What was happening at the end of season 4 and into season 5 that caused the show to begin to lose its core audience? This is where I'm going to give you one major spoiler warning for this video, because I'm about to ruin the entire show for you in case you plan on watching it on your own. So if you want to go do that, watch all 160 episodes of this amazing television show, and then come back here if you do not want to get spoiled. Honestly though, what am I talking about? This show has been over for 9 years, so chances are if you clicked on this video, you've probably seen the show already. Anyway, yeah, the show's first big mistake was bringing Allison back to life. It's kind of what ended up killing the show, if you ask me. And you may be asking yourself, why and how did this seemingly brilliant twist completely change the show for worse in the end?
Allison? Yes, Catherine. I have something I want to tell you, but
In order to answer that question, though, I'm going to have to take you back again to the show's first couple seasons. In season 1, it is explained that Allison De Laurentiis, the local mean girl of Rosewood, Pennsylvania, disappeared on Labor Day in 2009. All of her best friends, Aria, Spencer, Hannah, and Emily, were at a sleepover in Spencer's barn, and in the middle of the night, Spencer was woken up to the sound of screams. There is then a time jump to 1 year after the events that happened in that barn on night 1. Aria and her family have returned from a 1-year-long sabbatical in Iceland. Aria learns from Emily that in the last year, it wasn't just Aria who lost touch with all the girls. All the girls individually lost touch with each other because Allison was kind of like the glue that held all of these girls together. Across the episode, we follow each of the girls as they begin to receive anonymous texts, emails, and paper notes that either threaten to expose them of something or to simply make fun of them and to get them to feel like they are being watched. These notes are signed only by the letter A, who is a figure that will go on to be the biggest mystery of the show. This A figure makes it their absolute fucking mission to learn absolutely everything about all of these girls, but also not only all of these girls, but everyone in these girls' personal lives, so that they can continue to bully, threaten, and demean the girls whenever they get the chance. When Allison's body is found at the end of the pilot episode, that confirms to all of the girls who had previously thought that Allison was behind all of these schemes that she's not. She's dead. A is an actual threat, not just their missing friend that's just trying to mess with them. Season 1 focuses on the girls coming to grips with Allison's disappearance and death, as well as their personal journeys through each of their individual grieving processes. You see, Allison wasn't just some mean girl to the people that she didn't like. She was very, very demeaning and rude and bitchy to the core 4 as well. She knew things that could get all of the girls in trouble, or could embarrass them, or could make them feel bad about themselves, and she would frequently take it upon herself to poke them and make them feel shame or guilt or embarrassment about whatever Allison knew about them. She would also often bully them into doing things that they didn't want to do. Early on in the show, there are plenty of flashbacks that show each of the 4's main relationships with Allison. Each girl basically gets their own set of flashbacks to kind of flesh out their own personal thoughts and feelings towards Allison, and how that relates to their grieving process in the present day. For example, Allison had this thing about Hannah's weight. She always made fun of Hannah for being slightly bigger than the other girls, and warned Hannah that if she couldn't get thinner like the rest of them, she'd be cut off from the group. Allison also used and abused Emily, who was truly in love with Allie. Behind closed doors, Allison would kiss Emily and tease a tame romance between the two, only to let Emily hang there every single time. Allison would then slyly make these homophobic comments about Emily right in front of the other girls in order to almost out her to the others without actually saying the words. She played on Emily's emotions and made made her feel like she truly loved her as more than just a friend. Worst of all was the relationship between Spencer and Allison, which was a very tense rivalry for multiple years, seeing as the duo's families already kind of hated each other. The duo had a bit of a love-hate relationship because Spencer was really the only one in the group that was willing to call out Allison's bullshit on some occasions. Most of the shenanigans Allison would get the girls into got called out by Spencer, and Allison just could not stand it. Arya was pretty much the only girl that Allison didn't get into a fight with or try to embarrass all that much, although there was that one time that Allie and Arya caught Arya's dad kissing his student, whom he was having an affair with. That led to Allison trying to blackmail Arya into telling her mother. You could argue that that was bullying for sure, and pressuring Arya to do something that she didn't want to do, but Allison isn't technically in the wrong for wanting Ella to know the truth about Byron. It was just more so the way that Allison was going about the situation instead of just keeping her lips sealed. It is set up in the first couple seasons of the show that Allison has sociopathic tendencies. She uses people to gain power and keep people afraid of her, leaving behind a trail of jaded relationships after she goes missing. There was one instance that is referred to in the show as the Jenna thing, where Allison forced all of the other girls to help blind one of her arch rivals named Jenna. Allison would then go on to blame the blinding of Jenna on Jenna's stepbrother named Toby, who literally didn't do anything wrong. Allison does things to ruin people's lives by manipulating them, blackmailing them, or just straight up being a bitch to them. It's all because she wants to feel some sort of power over them or to feel superior to them. You know, with the Jenna thing, she didn't like Jenna. She had a feud with Jenna, so she blinded her so that Jenna would fall in line. And it's like some kind of sick game to Allison. She felt catharsis out of this. She felt like she had won after this situation, and this is one example of many. Allison had a history of bullying people at Rosewood that she just didn't like, whether it be Mona, Paige, or Lucas. Allison frequently tried her absolute hardest to embarrass everyone just to feel some sort of superiority over them. Even outside of school, she was blackmailing Arya's father, Byron, all the while pretending to stay out of the situation in front of Arya. Allison was a terrible person before she went missing, and all of these flashbacks in the first couple seasons consistently depict her as a genuine menace to society. This all started to change around season 4 when the writers started to hint at the fact that Allison could possibly still be alive. At that point, each of the girls had been put in a situation where they had sort of had a vision of or had hallucinated Allison before, and the impetus for this collective thought that they begin to have happens in the season 3 finale, because at that point, each of the girls had had a vision, but it was like they were all spread out across random episodes in there. Hannah's was in season 1, Emily's was in season 2, and I think Arya and Spencer's were both in season 3. At this point, the girls all see Allison, maybe besides Arya, I think is the only one that doesn't see Allison on this occasion. They had all been locked inside of a mansion by A, and it was on fire. A set it on fire, and Allison pulled them out. Or at least they think it could be Allison because all of them saw Allie's face. Again, I think besides Arya. This event causes the girls to collectively believe that Allie is still out there somewhere and someone else is in her grave. And while this is a very interesting take on the story and a really interesting twist to throw in there, it raises so many questions that fundamentally change the show for better or worse. The first arc of season 4 leaves both the liars and the audience guessing about whether or not the show is actually going to go there in bringing Allie back to life. The first 12 episodes of the 4th season are spent on this question, and it drags and drags and drags and holds your attention the whole time. And then it actually happened.
Allison? Yes, Catherine. I have something I want to tell you, but...
During season 4's hiatus, the show would air a Halloween-themed episode which focused on the girls traveling to a nearby town named Ravenswood to look for Allison, as they had a sneaking suspicion that Allie was still alive. More on that in a bit though. In earlier episodes, the girls had learned that prior to Allison's disappearance, Allie had made contact with some sort of seer or medium named Miss Grunwald, all in order to figure out who would want to hurt Allie, as Allie was receiving anonymous text messages around the time of her disappearance. The girls had found Miss Grunwald in an earlier episode, and she had warned the girls not to return to Ravenswood and to stop looking for Allie. Grunwald also revealed to the girls that she had a hand in saving Allison from the brink of death, pulling her out of a grave as she was buried alive. Half believing that this lady is off her rocker, half wondering that maybe this whole tale could be true, the girls make their way to a party in Ravenswood to try and track Allie down. At the party, they get sidetracked on their own little side missions that don't really have anything to do with the main plot of the episode. I'm looking at you, Miranda. Before finally coming face to face with the one, the only, living Allison De Laurentiis. After 84 episodes, the show had just completely flipped its premise on its head. And don't get me wrong, this is kind of a masterfully done twist in my opinion at first. The reunion scene is incredibly tense and emotional and just a really well directed and acted scene on all fronts. But like I mentioned before, it raises a lot of questions that the show drags out and doesn't necessarily answer in the most satisfying way. For the next 11 episodes or so, we are dragged along as well about Allie. We don't ever get to see Allie all that much, and the girls don't get to see Allie all that much until the season 4 finale. Allison must leave again because Rosewood still isn't safe until the liars can help her figure out who wants her dead. The show then fell into a bit of a lull from episodes 14 to 20, but there were definitely some good episodes in there. It's just this specific plotline surrounding the return of Allison was kind of put on pause until the finale, save for a few scenes here and there. Now, don't get it twisted. Season 4 is one of, if not the best season of this show, but it also marks a chilling turning point for the show. Season 5 onward is a little unfortunate to watch. With Allison back in town by the beginning of season 5, the writers decided that they needed to incorporate some kind of change to her character in order for her to work with the current dynamic of the girls. They decided to give Allison a character arc and completely overhaul her as a person. And I think that this is my biggest issue with them deciding to bring Allie back to the show and decide that she's no longer dead. As the seasons go on, Allison's character gets less and less interesting the more that they progress her character. She learns from her mistakes and suddenly just becomes so incredibly boring. I'm not even against her changing because that's the mark of a beautiful character arc in my opinion, but the writers really do not know what the hell to do with her after season 5. Specifically after the 5-year time jump halfway through season 6, Allison's character is rendered completely useless in the plot. In the beginning of the series, she went from being the entire reason that the story was happening at all, to being the 5th most interesting liar, and easily the least important of them as well. Another issue that I have with this fucking decision to reveal that Allison is alive is that it completely undermines the premise of Pretty Little Liars. Fundamentally, the show is just not the same once Allie is revealed to be alive. The core 4 have mixed emotions when they find out that Allie is dead at the beginning of the show. She was their best friend, but she was also their greatest rival and their biggest bully. At the beginning of the show, each of them has a reason to be glad that Allie is no longer in their lives. And it led to some brilliant character development and character moments throughout the first 4 seasons of the show. Allison's death paved the way for Hannah to gain confidence in herself and lose the weight that she'd been trying to lose. Granted, it was kind of an unhealthy weight loss, and then she began stealing clothes and trying to embody Allison, and that was kind of wrong, but eventually Hannah learned her lesson and she stopped kind of trying to model her personality after Allie. Specifically, like around the middle to end of season 1 is when I would say that that transition starts, which is a good thing because that was Hannah processing Allison's death, or what she thought was her death. Emily was finally able to accept her lesbian identity and get with an actual person that was interested in her in Maya, unlike Allison, who was just trying to manipulate her and use Emily's obsession with Allison, or her love for Allison, to feel some sort of power over Emily. Yes, Emily had to grieve Allison and had to come to terms with her death, but it also allowed Emily to be freed of Allison's torment, essentially. Arya's family did end up kind of falling apart after Allison's death anyway, so you can't necessarily say that Arya's life changed all that much for the better with Allison gone, but I do think that the immediate threat of Arya's family falling apart right away with Allison's manipulations and her blackmail and her chokehold that she had on Byron went away once Allie was dead. So in some ways, Arya's life was improved once Allie was gone. And finally, with Allison dead, Spencer finally got to move on with her life after this huge rival that she had in her life, basically from when she was a child. Anyway, my point is, each of the girls had something to gain from Allie being dead. And I don't mean that in a way of them wanting her dead necessarily, but their lives do get better in some aspects with Allie gone. Emily wasn't being manipulated day to day by Allie or so on or so forth. So to bring Allison back into their lives is to completely undo all of that development, all in service of this really cool possible twist that the writers get to pull off here. And I just don't know if I think that that is a fair trade. And that's not to say that the girls completely regress back into their prior selves or anything. I think some interesting storylines do happen once Allison comes back into the girls' lives, like how Hannah completely has like a personality crisis and she doesn't know who the fuck she is anymore. I'm a big believer in the reason for twists coming first and then the twists coming after that, if that makes any sense. You shouldn't think up a twist and then try to work around it to explain why it makes sense. You should think of the circumstances that will lead to a twist and then kind of fine tune that twist. I think the writers did the opposite in this case, where they thought, you know, we want to bring Allison back because that's a shocking moment, and that is that's going to get a lot of people talking, obviously, because that flips the entire premise of the show on its head. And they thought about how good of a twist that is, which led them to ultimately want to put it in the show. You shouldn't think up a twist first and then try to come up with the reasoning for that later, because it just isn't gonna make sense. And that's kind of what happened with Allison and her being revealed to be alive. My last thing with this twist that I think is a problem is something I kind of already mentioned, but I think that the twist genuinely ruins the canon of the show. What exactly do I mean by that? Well, the timeline of the night of Allison's disappearance is never fully explained in its entirety. The writers had made quite a habit of returning to that night over and over and over again, basically throughout every single season, which broadened the scope of everything that happened on that fateful night, almost to the point that it just became folklore. Like, there's just no way that all of that shit happened in one night. It's kind of made fun of a lot online about how ridiculous the show's timeline is. The more clues that the show would drop, the less it would make sense. And it is for that reason that we truly never get to see the whole night from start to finish in a way that feels satisfying. We know the main things that happen. Allison drugs her friends, then has a series of meetings with people like Ian, Toby, and Ezra. There were also encounters that she had with Byron and Jenna and Garrett. There were just so many scenes that truly didn't fit into what was actually important about that night. The only two things that technically needed to be explained were, how did Allison get unburied, like who unearthed her, and who killed Bethany, and also who hit Allison in the first place. I just feel like all these extra reveals, like, ooh, Byron had a confrontation with her. Ooh, Melissa and Cece were talking. Or, ooh, Jenna and Garrett had a confrontation with Allison. Or Ezra. You know, it's just like all these things I think were just thrown in there to make people look guilty at different points throughout the series. And it all just kind of feels like a waste of time at the end of the day. There are just so many things wrong with everything I just said, because also it's revealed that Mona is the one that killed Bethany and just left her body there. So it's like, how is it that Mona had time to kill Bethany Young after Allison was pulled out of the grave? Allison is taken to the hospital, and then Mona is already on Allison's trail tracking her down when she thinks that she's just killed her. But in season 4 finale, when we actually find out about this, before we know that Bethany died because of Mona. Mona doesn't even look that shocked that Allison is alive. I would have been quaking in my boots if I was Mona and I thought I had just gotten rid of my arch nemesis, but it ended up being someone else that I had killed. Maybe Mona realized that she killed Bethany and not Allie, and that's why she left her body there for Melissa to bury. I don't know. See what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many things that you have to account for, and the writers never accounted for barely any of it, and they were just like, I guess Mona could have been the one to kill Bethany. This just proves that the writers had the idea to bring Allison back, which on its own is not a bad idea. I want to be clear of that. But the only way that they could feasibly bring Allie back was by introducing another random girl in the exact same yellow top, which leaves a lot up to the imagination of how that even came to be. In order to accomplish their goal, the writers had to bend the show's own logic to the point that it just didn't work. I think that the blueprint or the pieces of a good twist are here, the bones of a good twist are here, but the writers just didn't know how to shift the pieces of the puzzle perfectly so everything fit. So as a result, we just have all of this bullshit that we have to comb through, like Melissa and Cece, which didn't actually even happen, because Cece wasn't there in a yellow top that night. And obviously you can explain that away as Jason not knowing what the fuck was happening because he was out of it. But like other scenes like Byron and Allison, that was only thrown into season 3 to make Byron look guilty for like an episode. And it was like, it didn't ever get us any closer to figuring out what the fuck happened that night. So therefore it's like null and void. Like, it's just like, okay, we don't need this. Thankfully, Allison's character assassination doesn't come until much later after season 5. At least for season 5, the season in which Allison returns, she gets to sort of step back into the same personality she had before she disappeared, albeit a slightly more mature and nuanced version of her former self, but still a bitchy, manipulative, mean girl ruling over Rosewood High with an iron fist. This evolution of her character wasn't actually all that bad at first, as I said before. Her lying to the police about being kidnapped spawned a lot of drama for this season. Allie's justification for doing this is that she gets a text from A that indicates Shauna is not A because Shauna is dead, and A is still messaging her. And then you have Allison's arrest for Mona's death, and eventually the girls are investigated for the same thing, which I think is a pretty interesting storyline as well, and a pretty interesting take on, as soon as Allie comes back into this friend group, then they're taken into questioning. Anyway, it's not until season 6 that Allison becomes completely useless to the plot. She didn't go to the dollhouse, so there's no repercussions of her learning to kind of cope with what just happened to her like the other girls, and her stupid ass love story with the adult groomer cop bores me to no end. Allison, from the season 6 premiere onward, has nothing to fucking do, and it leaves you wondering why the writers bothered to resurrect her in the first place. Other than the fact that at the end of this arc, Allison is the one to figure out that Cece is not only her half-sister, but A as well. Allison does absolutely nothing during season 6A. She has no interesting character qualities whatsoever anymore. Her storylines are not that engaging, and honestly, I don't think that the writers give Sasha all that much to work with either, which is very unfortunate because she used to be the main focus of the show. She used to be the main reason why everything was happening, and after season 5, she's barely involved at all and nothing really has to do with her. At least in season 5, she had that willingness to change, but outside forces kind of forced her back into her old persona a little bit. Like, that was interesting, as I said. Like, one thing led to another, and Mona kind of pushed her back into that more bitchy, like, high school Regina George type character. In season 7, though, I truly do not know who Allison is. Like, there's just nothing there. And Sasha, unfortunately, is sleepwalking through this performance because there's nothing for her to do. A lot of it, I think, also has to do with Sasha's unfortunate PCOS diagnosis, which definitely affected how she was presented on the show because she started gaining weight. For whatever reason, I think the writers saw that and decided to make her less important. Like, that's how it comes off, which is so unfortunate. Sasha should not have had to go through that situation in the first place, and the fact that the writers truly stopped caring about her character because she had a slight change in her appearance is unfortunate. I'm not accusing the writers of doing this deliberately. I think it's just in the 2000s we were skinny, we were blonde, and we were very, 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 very vapid, I guess. And that was the picturesque mean girl, if that makes any sense, and the picturesque popular girl. And for Allison to suddenly, I guess, for Sasha to start gaining this weight, it kind of changed how the writers saw Sasha and Allison's character. And so I think that is what ultimately led them to like stop caring about her. And I think Sasha's gone on record with this, I guess, as a theory of her own as well, that once the weight gain started, the costuming department didn't know what to do with her anymore. And you can tell because Sasha's outfits in season 7 and season 6 are actually abysmal when you compare them to the other girls. They just didn't know how to dress her. And the worst part is you could tell around the middle of season 5 that the writers wanted to play the long game with her character and kind of slowly turn her into a good person, because they had planted the seeds for that in the middle of season 4 and like late season 4 when Allie first returned. But like I said, outside forces kind of, I think, changed their perspective on Allison's character. The writers just completely forgot to write a character arc for her, and they forgot to complete what they set up in season 5. It was just like, Allie's good now. The other thing that fucking pisses me off is Allison's agency is also completely taken away after the time jump. She doesn't feel like a woman with her own goals and her own ambitions and her own character arc. Like I said, she doesn't have a character arc. She doesn't have interests or ambitions. She's just obsessed with this doctor that she's marrying, and she's upset that Charlotte is dead, which I guess you could say is a mission of hers, is to figure out what happened to Charlotte. Allie is a character that once demanded your attention. In the beginning of the show, she was the definition of a master manipulator, someone who would stop at nothing to get what she desired most. And by the end of the show, she means as much to the show's plot as fucking Paige. Oh, and let's not even get into the fact that her and Emily are suddenly in love and everything is fine and forgiven. In the last season, I believe, is when they get together. And to be clear, I am not saying that Allison needed to stay a maniacal sociopath manipulating everybody in her way for the entirety of the show. I think that could have been interesting if you just kept it that way, for sure. But like I said, character arcs need to be followed through on. And I just don't think that they followed through on Allie's. It was like a sudden shift after the time jump. Allison's sass was completely lost after season 5, and it's such a shame because evil sociopath or not, that's what made Allison Allison. Take away her velvet tongue and quippy remarks, and who is she? Pretty Little Liar number 5 swaying in the background, waiting to be rescued. Sasha, I am so sorry that the writers did this to you, girl. You deserved so much better than this.
Allison? Yes, Catherine? I have something I want to tell you, but...
Another thing that I think was a huge misstep around this time was the decision by the writers to reveal that Ezra Fitz, pedophilic teacher that groomed her since the start of season 1, had known about Arya's age when they met and sought her out because he was writing a book on Allison De Laurentiis, whom he was also having somewhat of an affair with before her disappearance. This reveal could have been so good. For the first 4 seasons at that point, Arya and Ezra's relationship was completely built on secrecy. This caused a lot of tension between the two, and they eventually broke up and got back together like once or twice per season. It's a bit of a joke within the fandom how many times these two break up. It's honestly embarrassing. Like, he should have just been taken to jail. For literal years, the show tried to normalize Arya and Ezra's relationship to their very teenage girl-leaning audience, which is problematic in and of itself, but within this story, the show was still treating Arya and Ezra like a normal thing, even though Arya was 16 when they met and Ezra was her teacher. In the show's own canon, Arya is just mature for her age, and Ezra was just an unlucky guy in a bar that met someone who lied about their age, which led to them being a sort of Romeo and Juliet type love affair in the beginning. It's described to us as Ezra falling for the right girl at the wrong time, And I won't say it didn't necessarily work on a lot of fans because the weight of what Arya and Ezra are doing in the first couple seasons kind of gets like diluted as time goes on. Specifically during like season 3 and 4, you begin to kind of forget that Arya is a teenager as much as she was in the first 2 seasons. Obviously, this is because the show was making it its absolute mission to get you to root for these two. Anyway, for a while, specifically starting around season 3, Arya and Ezra's storylines bored the absolute shit out of me. Because it no longer was about this duo that know that they're in the wrong, trying to hide themselves from the world. At that point, Arya's parents had found out about Ezra, and Ezra had stopped teaching at Rosewood High, so there really wasn't any danger of this relationship being exposed, because they just simply weren't trying to hide it anymore. During season 4, though, the writers decide to completely change the context of this already fucked up and frankly annoying-ass relationship. In the 12th episode of season 4, the 4 liars find themselves in Ravenswood. They follow one of the redcoats into what appears to be A's new secret lair. The room is filled to the brim of damning evidence against literally everyone in Rosewood. There are posters and timelines for everybody. It looks pretty insane. Anyway, the girls leave the lair, and by the end of the episode, it's revealed that Ezra is the owner of this apartment, and he knows that the girls have found the place. The ending of that episode sets Ezra up as A, and the entire next arc of the show, Season 4B, exists entirely to make you believe that Ezra is A. He begins acting very strange and letting out his true colors to the audience. The only liar that ever comes close to exposing Ezra is Spencer, who had to quietly back down from her fight against him because she was dealing with her own drug-related issues at the time, and the girls simply stopped believing her as a credible source. The seeds were planted for a really thrilling, wonderful, evil twist here, and it would have completely recontextualized Arya and Ezra's already fucked up relationship. But when it came for the writers to try and make it make sense, the writers again failed because 7 or 8 episodes into this arc, they decide to reveal Ezra only has all of this shit on everyone because he's writing a book about Allie, whom he had an affair with before her disappearance. Ezra, the college-age frat boy, and Allison, who was like 14 or 15 at that point. This man seriously deserves jail time, I swear to God. It's one thing to position Ezra as a guy who didn't know Arya's age when he met her, and to have him intensely fall for her to the point that he can't ignore his feelings, which is already fucking disgusting. But it's a whole other thing to have Ezra be revealed to know Arya's age and go after her, like literally groom her so he can find information on Allison. Like, I am just so sorry. You cannot redeem that character. Once Ezra gets to that point where he's revealed to be this fucking psychotic, like watching everyone around him type character, and like I said, grooming a 16-year-old girl so he could write a fucking book about another 16-year-old girl that he was obsessed with, there's just nothing you can do to make that character sympathetic again. When Arya finds out about this in the 20th episode of the season, she understandably freaks out, and it's one of the only times in the series I rooted for her and was actually on her side. If Ezra wasn't A, I guess that reveal of him grooming Arya to gather information for his book works just fine to explain why he had that layer and was acting all shifty when the girls got too close to exposing him. As fucked up as this twist is, I take no issue with it, honestly. Like, I think it was executed pretty well, honestly. If Ezra couldn't be A, fine. This is still a really fucked up turn of events that completely recontextualizes and forces you to rethink Arya and Ezra's entire relationship, which works really well, and it leads to a really dramatic end of season 4, in my opinion. What I am not okay with is Ezra's redemption arc that happens at the end of season 4 when he is shot by Shauna, and into early season 5 when Arya forgives him from all that bullshit that he did only like a couple weeks ago. All of that potential that the writers had set up with Ezra being a fucking creep is just completely gone, because early into season 5, Arya forgives him, and I think they get back together like 5 episodes into the season, which is just a terrible backtrack. The writers and their fucking backtracking and their unwillingness to stick with things that they've already written is deplorable, honestly. This is around the time that I started to notice the show stopped caring about delivering meaningful answers that would stick. They teased Ezra was A, and then they revealed, oh no, he's just a fucking creep that's writing his book. And then they were like, oh, honestly, he's redeemable. He was just trying to help everyone figure out who A was. Like, no, actually, he groomed a 16-year-old. Let's stick with that narrative, please. I honestly think that Ezra could have been A, and he probably should have been A, because this was a masterfully done twist that I don't think anybody really saw coming. Like, it totally comes out of nowhere, but when it eventually plays out and we learn that he had a thing for Allie, it makes a lot of sense. And it works on so many levels. And so then for the writers to just yank it back, like it just didn't even happen, is, like I said, it's really unfortunate, because it was a really good twist that divided the liars for many episodes in the back half of season 4. The plotline of everyone thinking Spencer was going crazy because she was on speed, but was actually right about Ezra being a fucking weirdo was golden, but it could have been legendary if Spencer was right about Ezra being the A. The writers again got cold feet, and they had to again write around a twist so that they could try and make it make sense without fully committing to that twist, which, again, there are so many examples of this happening, like with the Allison disappearance, and then it was Allison dead, and then it was like, oh no, Allison's not really dead, and so on and so forth. As I mentioned before, the writers have this habit of coming to a conclusion first and then trying to map out how that conclusion makes any sense. And in their attempts to do so, they end up making one giant fucking mess of plot holes and inconsistencies that is hard to watch, you know, when you're watching a mystery show that is supposed to be making sense.
Allison? Yes, Catherine? I have something I want to tell you, but...
Right from the get-go, the Shauna is A reveal absolutely sucks, and it opens season 5, which I think is the first season that truly begins with issues. The first 4 seasons are really good, and there are issues with each one, and a lot of issues kind of start at the end of season 4, as I mentioned, but they don't begin with that. Season 5 straight up begins with issues and plot holes and inconsistencies and random character deaths. And so that's what I want to talk about here in this section. Halfway through season 4, it is revealed that Shauna knew Allison before Allison disappeared. Allison's grandmother was neighbors with Shauna in Georgia, and so that's how the two met when Allison was very young. And it's so strange to make that connection. Like, I just don't know what the writers were thinking there. Once the liars figure this out, they have to kind of process how Shauna fits into all of this, and it's left as a mystery for quite a long time. Not a particularly interesting mystery, because Shauna is the one that's helping Allie, so you really don't have any reason to feel suspicious of Shauna after you learn that Shauna is just staying with Jenna because she's trying to keep Allison's enemies close, I suppose. But then something fucking weird happens in the season 5 premiere. Before I get into that though, Shauna is written out of season 4 around episode 21, I think, because she's choked in her car, like choked out in her car when she's trying to deliver some money to Allison. And we don't see her again until the premiere of season 5, where she visits Ezra in the hospital and starts acting all fucking weird around Arya. It's here where the writers pull the most random fucking twist out of their asses and reveal that Shauna is A when she confronts all of the girls in Ezra's family's theater in New York. Always feeling like they need to be one step ahead of the audience, to the point that they just throw in random chaos at any given moment to keep the liars and the audience on their toes. The writers just decide that Shauna's evil now for no fucking reason. They write in this really shoehorned in twist in this episode that Shauna is the one that shot Ezra on the top of the roof in the finale of season 4 because she was trying to kill Allison for some fucking reason, and her motivation is weak as hell. We find this out when Shauna tracks down Allison hiding in Ezra's family's theater and confronts her and the others with a gun, donning A's iconic black hoodie and gloves. She cringely monologues about her love for Jenna being a motive for her betrayal against Allie, and it's like, okay, I guess there are a number of things here that I take issue with. Namely, Shauna and Allison's relationship was so underdeveloped that I feel absolutely nothing when Shauna dies or when she betrays Allison. The show presents this as a huge betrayal, and technically it should be. Shauna is supposed to be one of Allison's closest friends, but seeing as the entirety of their relationship was summed up to us in like 3 conversations during season 4, it feels kind of odd and rushed. I mean, this is literally their first scene together on screen, and I'm supposed to care about this? Like, what? Secondly, Shauna was attacked at the end of season 4, so the writers' attempt to get us to believe that Shauna is A at the beginning of season 5 is kind of pathetic because we already have evidence that Shauna was attacked by A. Why would they show the real A getting attacked by someone if A is supposed to be a mastermind behind everything? I would also love to know what evidence Ezra has against Shauna, because Ezra's the one that clues Arya in to the fact that Shauna is A, and I'm just like, where did that come from? Like, why did Ezra make that assumption? They never really explain it as far as I can remember. Thirdly, I simply just do not believe that Shauna cared that much about these people, especially Allison, that I don't think she could have been that close to, because how often was Allie even visiting her grandma in Georgia? Like, I'm so sorry, unless they were like absolutely best friends and Allie spent years in Georgia that we just don't know about. I don't know how Shauna could get so invested in her neighbor's granddaughter's life and drama that she would move to her hometown in Pennsylvania and help keep an eye on the people that Allie didn't like. And because they didn't show us all that much of Jenna and Shauna's relationship either, I don't believe that Shauna cared that much about Jenna and protecting her to go after and try and kill Allison, whom we're supposed to believe that she cares about more originally. Like, it's just such a mess. I'm so sorry. The entire character of Shauna sucks and her motivations don't make any sense, and trying to reveal her as A is cheap in my opinion and a shitty way to start the 5th season. Lastly, Arya arrives to make quick work of Shauna mid-evil monologue, striking her from behind with the end of a shotgun, causing Shauna to fall off the stage and die, just like that. We have talked a lot in this video about the writers coming up with an idea and writing around it by bending their own canon to accomplish that said twist. With the girls finally reunited with Allie, the writers had to throw the girls another curveball to open the next chapter of the story. The writers had already done the work to walk back the Ezra twist, revealing that he was just some obsessive author, so it couldn't be him. Cece was in police custody around this time, so it couldn't possibly be her behind these shenanigans. Melissa was being interviewed about the girls' whereabouts around this time as well, so she was off the table. Mona and Lucas were gathering a bunch of Allie haters in Rosewood, so they were both out of the picture. That basically left Shauna, which is why it felt so random. I'm so sorry, but why would you have Shauna start off the show as a villain, then you reveal her as not so bad because she actually has ties with one of the main characters and is actively trying to help bring her back into the other main characters' lives again, just to reveal that Shauna was evil all along and had her own ulterior motives, but try to mask that under the guise of her being A. It just sucked. Aside from Arya feeling slightly guilty about Shauna's death at the beginning of season 5, nothing really comes from this plot point. None of the characters really grow or change because of it, and this revelation doesn't change the show going forward as a series either. It's just another time waster, honestly, which is unfortunate because this is the second time that the show has just thrown in a black character and made them evil for no reason. You begin to notice a little bit of a pattern here. It's also kind of frustrating as a viewer because at this point we've had 3 false alarms. In the middle of season 3, it was revealed that Toby was A, and then in the middle of season 4, it was revealed that Ezra is A. And now this thing with Shauna, it's just like, we just could not catch a break around this time because the writers were trying to give us little hints at who it could be without fully revealing the true identity. And this Shauna one is the least effective of the 3 because it literally lasted as long as a cup of coffee, and Shauna dies like right away. So yeah, it was an unfortunate decision in my opinion. I don't think it should have opened season 5, and I don't think Shauna should have even really been considered to be evil again. Like, they already had the reveal about her being friends with Allie. I think that that's where it should have ended. But no, the writers had to write some kind of plot twist into the beginning of season 5 to make the girls' journey back to Rosewood more difficult. Speaking of random shock value deaths, we have the death of Jessica De Laurentiis around this time as well, which I think hurt the show and Allison's character as well. It's just another example of the show feeling like they need to shock the audience rather than tell a compelling story with interesting characters and narratives and character arcs. For some reason, prior to my rewatch, I had it in my head that Jessica was a much bigger character in the show until her death. And in all honesty, I was kind of shocked when I rewatched it and realized that she was only in season 4 for the most part. She had a couple scenes in seasons 1 and 2, I believe, but season 4 is the bulk of her appearance in the show until her death. And I think that my memory of her being a pivotal part of the show when she kind of wasn't is all due to Andrea Parker's fantastic performance as Jessica. Like, she absolutely ate this fucking role down, and they found the perfect person to cast as Allie's mother, in my opinion. I grew to have such strong feelings for this diva. Like, she was fantastic in this role, and the character was also so compelling, and I don't like that they killed her off, because it also meant that once Allison did come back to Rosewood, the two never got a proper reunion. At the tail end of season 4, right as Allison is brought back to the show, Jessica, who had literally just gotten done with a wedding dress fundraiser, is killed off and buried in the backyard of the Hastings household by an unknown assailant. There is an irony to Mrs. D dying before she got to reunite with Allie. Sure, I'll grant the show that, but seriously, what other narrative purpose does killing Jessica serve? It comes off as kind of random, as I believe it's the last scene of the season. There's no foreshadowing that this is going to happen. There's no rhyme or reason that this happens to our knowledge right away anyway. It's just a shock value thing that happens, and then the writers have to explain why it happens much later on. What's even stranger about all of this is that Jessica was shown in this episode earlier on at the police station, finding out about Allie's status as being alive. So it kind of just comes off as really random. Like, first of all, why would Jessica leave the police station, girl? Like, I just think that if my daughter was alive and I didn't know about it for 2 years and suddenly I learn about it, I'm not just gonna like go home. Like, I'm gonna wait in the police station until they fucking find her. I think it was a huge missed opportunity to not have Allison and her mother reunite in the early moments of season 5, because what we get instead is Allison reuniting with her dad and Jason. Before this scene, I can think of 3 that had Kenneth in them. He was not a big character whatsoever in the first couple seasons, and then suddenly in season 5, he's just everywhere. But that also means that I don't really care about Kenneth as a character or his relationship with Allison, because we never really got to see any flashbacks between the two. And Jason literally could not be bothered to care about Allison's return, which undermines the importance of this moment, I would say. Wouldn't it make so much more sense to actually show the one reunion that would elicit an emotional response from the audience here if you wanted to truly sell how big this is for the show? I mean, this girl was dead for 2 years, and apart from Ken and some of the other girls, no one's reaction is really that shocked. Like, everyone's just like, oh yeah, Allie's back. Excuse me? She was that fucking front of the newspaper for 2 years, and the police had a tumultuous time trying to solve her murder, and suddenly she's back in Rosewood like she never died and nobody gives a fuck. There's also supposedly a line of reporters outside of Allie's house, but we literally never see that, and we don't really get to see the media frenzy that is supposedly happening around this time about Allie's return. And I think that that would have helped if they had included that. But again, the show doesn't treat it as much of a big deal as it should have been, in my opinion. I do think that the only reason why the writers killed Jessica off was because they knew that they wanted to bring Allie back, and they didn't think that keeping Jessica alive and having her reunite with Allie would have worked, because then Jessica would have had to explain why she buried Allie in the first place, which would have kind of spoiled the last 2 seasons of the show to the audience. So they thought that the only thing they could have done was to kill Jessica. But still, I don't think that they should have killed Jessica off. I think that there was ways around that.
Allison? Yes, Catherine. I tell you, but
Alright, this is a bit of a brief intermission in this video because I had to talk about it in this video somewhere and I didn't really know where else to put it, so I'm putting it here. If you want to actually move on with the video and you don't want to stick for this brief little timeline discussion, skip to this timestamp. If you're a fan of PLL, then you already know about the show's ridiculous timeline, specifically when it comes to the Never-Ending November. For those who aren't aware, the Never-Ending November was a phenomenon from the 3rd to the 5th seasons, where the entire timeline from episode 13 of season 3 to episode 12 of season 5 takes place all in one November, specifically from November 1st to November 23rd, which is Thanksgiving Day. Meaning that across 47 episodes of TV, just 23 days passed. All of this already doesn't look promising timeline-wise, like it just doesn't work, but it's all made worse by the fact that there are multiple instances in which characters refer to things happening months ago, like in season 5, Veronica told Spencer that she just cannot believe that Spencer kept the secret of Allie being alive from her for over a month and a half, which doesn't make any fucking sense timeline-wise, because what do you mean Spencer found out that Allie was alive in mid-November, and by, again, like a couple days later, she has this conversation with Veronica about how it's been a month and a half. You can't say that season 3's Halloween episode was in 2011 and then the Thanksgiving episode in season 5 takes place the next Thanksgiving. The girls would have been out of high school at that point. That line from Veronica isn't even the only evidence that suggests that the entirety of seasons 3B, 4, and 5A take place across a 3 to 4 months time span. Because roughly, if you actually watch the show and you check off each episode and you try to assemble the timeline of the show from those 47 episodes, it comes out to about 2 to 3 days per episode. So if you times that by 47, you get 117 days or 3.9 months. Which means that if the writers were smart, they would have replaced the Thanksgiving episode with a St. Patrick's Day episode or something to indicate that we are now in March, which would have been 3 to 4 months after the Halloween episode. But you know, the writers aren't that smart, so they end up just fucking up the timeline even more with this fuck-ass never-ending November situation. Let me just put this into perspective for you. The girls spend 2 months in high school during the first half of season 3 alone, and then from the last half of season 3 all the way to the middle of season 5 is 23 days. And then after that, we get a time jump to Christmas for the Christmas special in the middle of season 5, and then there's a 3-month time jump again. So that puts the rest of season 5B and season 6 from March to May, which is just the most inconsistent senior year I've ever seen in my life. Like, literally, what do you mean that everything that happened in 2 seasons of the show took place within a 3-week period, but then everything else is just, oh, you know, like a month later, 3 months later? The rest of their senior year is slow as fuck when you compare it to the never-ending November. It ruins everything, and I think that the writers really needed to hire some kind of canon specialist or something, someone that could keep the canon of the show consistent, because there's just no way for this to make sense. And many people are going to say, oh, you know, it doesn't really matter, it's just a show. No, it matters, because the way in which the story unfolds is the way in which you perceive it, obviously, and the amount of time that the story has to breathe and things that happen in that short amount of time simply do not add up. And as a story, it is less cohesive and concise and believable if the timeline doesn't add up.
Allison? Yes, Catherine? I have something I want to tell you, but
The last aspect of the show that I think led to its own downfall is also the part of the show that absolutely crushes the soul of Pretty Little Liars. No matter who you believed A was, the fandom was united in the belief that it had to be somebody who wasn't too obvious, but made perfect sense given the circumstances. When I say that there were boatloads of theories online surrounding Big A's identity, I'm not sure that the true weight of that sentence can be quantified. The discussions regarding A seemed to outgrow the show itself online. Almost everybody had a different theory. Some of the most popular ones that I can remember were Allison, Melissa, Ren, Arya even, and obviously Cece. When it was revealed that A was not only a man, but also related to the De Laurentiis family in the Dollhouse episodes, the theories shifted heavily to Andrew Campbell because he was acting fucking suspicious as fuck towards the early part of season 6, if I can remember correctly. There was also more theories about Ren possibly being this secret De Laurentiis brother, but I never really liked any of those. The show was trying its absolute hardest to make you believe that Andrew was A, but it was such a nothing burger, honestly. Like, he just didn't really give A potential to me. I thought that maybe it was just another cop-out, like with the Ezra, like, stalking everybody kind of thing. And, you know, to be fair, I was correct in that assumption, and many people were as well. In reality, the actual answer to who A was a lot more depressing and, upsetting, I would say. Not necessarily because the choice was all that bad, but we're going to get into that. You see, the writers had again written themselves into a corner, and their big twist ended up being that CC Drake had been the one to take over the game from Mona. It was explained in the season 6 mid-finale that CC Drake is actually a trans woman and is actually the sister of Allison and Jason. She claims to have been shut out of the De Laurentiis family at a young age due to her troubling behavior. This twist ends up playing into one of the most tired and regressive tropes of all time, blurring the lines between Cece's actions and mental illness with her trans identity. The show tries its absolute hardest to explain this twist and the background of Cece Drake all in one episode, and it's like such an impossible task when there's so much lore to go over and so much to learn about Cece as a character and her motivations. The writers have to go back on so many things and break their own canon just to justify this fucking Cece twist, and it honestly breaks the immersion of the show. It's almost like they didn't even try, because they reveal that Cece was somehow present for Marion Kavanaugh's death at like 12 years old or something, when we've already seen Marion Kavanaugh interact with Toby and Allison when Allison and Toby were like 14, 15, and that just doesn't make any fucking sense, because what do you mean Cece Drake was 12 years old at the time of Marion's death if Marion was still alive around the time that Toby and Allison were teenagers? If Marion truly did die when Cece was 12, Toby would have been like 8 at the maximum, and that just doesn't make any fucking sense, because there's no way that Toby was 8 in this scene with Allie. This also isn't even the biggest plot hole. There's so many other ones. Like, this fucking Sarah Harvey reveal is questionable and confusing and weird. The most annoying part about Cece being A is that it could have been so fantastic if they didn't reveal that Cece was born a man originally and later transitioned. It's like they had already decided A was a man and then changed their mind after season 5's finale aired, which forced them to explain that Cece was born a male so that they didn't have one gigantic plot twist on their hands. In order to do that, they had to rewrite many of the show's plot points to fit around that twist, and it's just so embarrassing for the writers. In seasons 3 and 4, there are many hints about Cece being A, and so that reveal would have fed families if they didn't try to make her identity the reason she swore to take the girls down. And to be clear, there is nothing wrong necessarily with the fact that Cece was revealed to be a trans woman. Obviously, I think the show was trying sort of to include more diverse characters in their show, but it's more so the way that they went about it that was extremely troubling, and the optics of making a trans woman the villain of the entire show, and also making her trans identity the reason why she's a villain and like so jaded towards everybody is also a little bit questionable. Like, the trans women are violent stereotype is an incredibly deeply rooted misconception, I guess you could say, about trans women and just trans people in general. And so for the show, a show as big as PLL to platform that kind of belief is just really wrong and transphobic in my opinion. Even if the showrunners thought that they were doing a good thing by including a trans character, they did not handle it right, and they were definitely riding on the wave of performative activism here, I would say. Although I'm not even sure if that was fully their intention, because like I said, they vilified a trans character. I don't know if your first instinct would be to do that if you're trying to platform a trans person. And it's not like the bones of a good twist weren't there. Cece as A works so fucking well. Like, also, the actress who portrays her did a fantastic job. I think the entire problem here is the fact that they tried to vilify a trans woman. Cece is very clearly a vapid, self-obsessed carbon copy of Allison, and I think it works really well to make her A, especially given the fact that she is kind of revealed to be a little bit jealous of Allie secretly, and she had a really complicated relationship with Mrs. D, which, like I said, all that stuff works really well. I just don't like the fact that they made her trans. Like, it completely ruins the entire twist, and I think it places blame on the wrong person. It's fully trying to convince you that Cece and her deluded mental state is also related to her transness, which again is very problematic messaging and very mixed messaging that we're getting here. They wrote in the actual story that Cece tortured and bullied and belittled and blackmailed all 5 of these girls, and Mona as well, from time to time, because she was cast out of the De Laurentiis family for being a little psychopathic at a young age, and also because she was trans. It's a really sour part of the show that I just wish I could forget about, but honestly, I can't. And I can say that the Charlotte reveal episode, Game Over Charles, is probably one of the worst episodes of PLL just because of that. The show just clearly did not know how to handle such a complex issue with nuance and respect. And you can tell because they say to hell with it and kill Cece off in the very next episode, which hands the game off to another person who we'll get to. If you take one thing from this video, let it be that of all these mistakes that I've just laid out, from the Ezra reveal to Allison's character completely getting fucked to the tragic timeline inconsistencies, this fucking Cece reveal is what killed PLL. Truly dead. After this episode, it's like the rest of the show just really fucking sucks. I'm not even gonna lie to you. The 5-year time jump is ass. I don't give a fuck about any of the characters after that point. After a garbage third act of the show that was 30 episodes long and was the longest season of the show, I don't consider 6B to be included with 6A. I think 6B through 7 is just one long season. The AD reveal finally took place in the series finale. And to say that it was almost worse than the CC reveal is a little bit of an understatement. The big twist at the end of the show sees Spencer getting kidnapped before Arya and Ezra's wedding. Spencer learns that AD, the next big bad that's been terrorizing the girls for the last few months, stands for Alex Drake, who happens to be Spencer's long-lost evil twin. The ensuing finale sees Alex trauma dumping on Spencer, similar to how Cece did to Allie just a season prior, asking the viewers to care about this completely random character and her tragic backstory just so you can have Troy and Belisario, the best actress on the show by the way, play the big bad with a questionable British accent is kind of hilarious in a really unfortunate way, and it's honestly really depressing that that was the big final twist of the show. Again, the show proves that it is not interested in delivering concrete, sensible answers to their questions. The writers instead wanted to provoke fans and throw something at them that they just weren't expecting through the use of shock value. As far as I'm aware, there aren't any canon-breaking revelations with this Alex Drake twist, but admittedly, it's been a while since I watched the series finale of the show, and I'm kind of dreading getting to the last 2 seasons of the show because I know that they're bad, and I know that I will not have a change of heart the second time I watch it. This reveal feel was just stupid, and it turns the final episode of the series into a joke. Perhaps there was a way to make this a lot better, but I don't really know how they would have done that, because genuinely the show did kind of run out of people to put in that AD slot. So they went with the very obvious choice of just dropping in an evil twin and hoping that it made sense. And choosing Spencer also just doesn't really make sense to me, because like there was no hints of that. Like we were always thinking maybe Allison had an evil twin, or maybe Arya had an evil twin, but Spencer having an evil twin is just so random. No hate to Troyan, absolutely love that diva, but there could have been so many other options that we went with, but we decided to go with the long lost twin shit. I think the writers wanted Alex to be campy, but that was kind of the antithesis of AD, who, like Cece, was implicated in multiple murders. If I wrote this season, I would have expanded more on Alex's motivation to even restart all of this, because how it plays out in the finale is kind of unsatisfactory in my opinion. I simply cannot believe that, one, Allison didn't know Cece and Alex were so close, considering Allie was apparently visiting Cece tons during her stay at Radley, or two, that for the short amount of time Alex and Cece knew each other, Alex felt strong enough hate/disdain for the girls that she'd restart the game to avenge her half-sister. Keep in mind, she never even met those girls in the first place. I just don't like that they revealed that Mary was Alex's and Spencer's real mom. Like, what the fuck were they thinking? Because why would Veronica just never tell her? It's one thing for everyone to lie about Jason being Peter's kid, but it is a whole other level of fucked up to pretend to be a child's mother and keep her from the knowledge that she is a twin. Shit like this just completely recontextualizes the show in the worst way imaginable, because now anytime that I watch a scene between Spencer and Veronica, the whole vibe is completely different now. Like, we literally have to reinterpret every dynamic in the show at some point because of these fuck-ass twists that don't really make sense. Anyway, the actual final nail in PLL obviously was the finale. PLL didn't die until the final episode, but a lot of the things that I laid out before were very, very instrumental in getting the show canceled. I 100% believe that, because once the show revealed that Allie was still alive and Ezra wasn't A and this person wasn't A, and you know, all of these random character deaths and the timeline not making any sense and all these plot holes showing up, and then of course the trans thing with Cece, it was just like one thing after another that truly spelt disaster for the show. Despite that fact, Warner Brothers has stopped at absolutely nothing to keep this franchise alive for some reason. Obviously, PLL is a popular IP and will likely continue to get rebooted in some way, shape, or form. Even if every spin-off they make fails to live up to the hype surrounding the first 4 or 5 seasons of the show, the big studios just simply do not care, and they will continue to go to the well to rehash old IPs.
Allison? Yes, Catherine? I have something I want to tell you, but
PLL was once an above-average teen drama that managed to capture the attention of seemingly everyone online during the early 2010s, perfectly balancing its incredibly intriguing mysteries with iconic characters and storylines. The online fandom for the show unanimously adored it for its strong, layered characters, impeccable twists, and millennial aesthetic. The show is a comfort show for many, despite its shortcomings in its second half. If PLL had been given an end date sometime around season 5 or even in early season 6, I don't think the writers would have made as many mistakes as they did. Because PLL was kept on air for as long as it was, that led to the writers feeling the need to stall on their mysteries for longer and longer. And it also forced them to keep implementing new characters and mysteries that didn't hit the same as the ones from the earlier seasons. I genuinely believe that the Dollhouse would have been a perfect series finale for the show if they had added an extra episode or two afterwards to help wrap everything up. And it also would have been fucking fantastic. But ABC was greedy, and Marlene King was not even sure what the hell she was writing half the time. It's clear to anyone who watches the show more than once that Marlene and the other writers had absolutely no plan for A. That's why everyone and their mother was a suspect at some point throughout the show, so that they didn't have to actually pick a lane and go with it. Pretty Little Liars is a show that just wouldn't work as well today, and that's unfortunate because for all its faults, even the ones I didn't bring up in this video, the show is still absolutely iconic, and the characters of Allison De Laurentiis, Spencer Hastings, Aria Montgomery, Emily Fields, and Hannah Marin remain in pop culture today as 5 of the most iconic characters on TV. The show was a product of its time, and its mistakes were bred due to the circumstances of that era. Many people were critical of the filler parts of the seasons, and as we started to transition more and more into the streaming era of television, shows like PLL began to disappear, which is really unfortunate in my opinion because I much prefer 22 episode seasons, 25 episode seasons over 6 episode seasons because you don't get the scope with a 6 episode season. It's just not enough. And also the storylines are far less interesting because they don't have enough time to get fully played out the same way that they would during a 22 episode season. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat, or at least have the same opinions, because shows like PLL are still talked about online. It might have seemed that throughout this video I just wanted an excuse to shit on PLL during her birthday, but honestly this video just started out as an earnest review of seasons 4 and 5, and then it kind of quickly snowballed into something else where I started to kind of take an in-depth look at the series as a whole, and that's when I kind of realized that seasons 4 and 5 is when all the problems for the show kind of started. So that was the impetus for me making this video. I apologize if I was a little too harsh at times in this video. I love PLL. Don't let the tone of this video throw you off. Pretty Little Liars is genuinely so near and dear to me because it was one of the first shows that I ever got into. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to say on the matter, honestly, at least for now. I might make a larger video or a series potentially on PLL, so if you would like to see that, comment down below and maybe I'll consider making it. If you enjoyed this video, please go down below and hit subscribe and like the video, maybe share it around with people that might enjoy it. Anyway, it's been fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Happy birthday to PLL, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!